Hi, everyone. My name is Phil, and we're just really excited for you to be here today. I have a special guest, Esther, here. I'm going to have her introduce herself as we just talk about OT practice beyond sort of the clinical setting. And so I have so grateful to have this special guest with us today. Esther, go ahead and introduce yourself and where you're from.
Sure. Hi, I'm Esther. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been practicing for about 13 years now in a variety of settings. I live in LA, like Phil mentioned, and currently I'm working in the inclusive beauty space.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I have a lot of questions. Well, maybe not a lot of questions, but a few questions just to ask you about working in the inclusive beauty space. So do you mind telling us a little bit about your journey into the inclusive beauty space and what that's been like for you?
Yeah, so I've practiced in a lot of different settings from, outpatient pediatric physical disabilities to school-based to home health. And at a certain point, I realized maybe I could try something a little bit outside of what's, you know, typically available to us in terms of jobs. And I had met an OT colleague at one of actually my fieldwork experiences. She was my clinical instructor, somebody also named Esther. We met in Ghana, and we went on to launch a nonprofit organization that serves survivors of sex trafficking who are looking to transition into meaningful and gainful employment. So I did that for a couple of years. And then after that, I went back to school for my OTD. And then from there, I landed at my first or my last occupational therapy job, traditional quote unquote occupational therapy job for the Department of Mental Health in LA County, doing kind of similar work, like supporting people who want to go back to work or find work for the first time, even. Yeah, and then the pandemic hit. And so after that, I did a lot of soul searching. We also had a baby during the pandemic, so that was a total game changer. And yeah, I found myself kind of thinking about like how I want to apply myself in the limited amount of time and the limited capacity that I have. And I thought, I had been also doing makeup as a makeup artist for all these years, kind of like in tandem with OT. And I seriously considered like ways to kind of combine those two. So that's where I'm at today.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. So you kind of reiterated, so a lot of us during the pandemic kind of did a lot of soul searching as well as pivoting in our own careers.
Mhm.
So what was it that kind of like led you to like transitioning? I mean, to be able to lead like a nonprofit and
Mhm.
then the pandemic family, I mean, that just happens to everyone. We have, our own personal situations. That's really important for us to be in tune with ourselves, like, and especially serving as a profession that helps people all the time. Like, what made you kind of like merge those two? Like, what was that decision point?
I mean, beauty was definitely something throughout my career that I was able to like utilize as an intervention tool with clients. Of course, based on their goals and whatnot as an OT. And it was always such a powerful experience, like something that wasn't really addressed in OT intervention, kind of similar to like sexuality. I feel like that's not something that's really talked about a lot. But when we did use beauty or a beauty routine or, you know, kind of like the application of makeup in therapy, like I saw the benefits to well-being and quality of life. And like, just more than that, I think maybe even self-expression, like as part of their identity, being able to do something like that. So it's something that I was like always thought there's definitely like these go hand in hand, beauty and occupational therapy, especially if you view it as an ADL of sorts. So I consulted with an executive coach because I tried to OT myself, it wasn't successful, and like what to do next. And I mentioned kind of offhand, like, oh, by the way, I'm a makeup artist as well. And she's like, you need to highlight that. Like, why wouldn't you bring that up? Like, I guess she felt like that was a part of me that I needed to kind of like incorporate into my professional self, which kind of was an eye-opening experience for me because I saw those two kind of as separate things. Like I did makeup on the weekends for weddings. Like I didn't do, unless I was working on something beauty related with a client. So yeah, I kind of explored what that would look like. And then here I am,
Here
kind
you
of
are.
still figuring out what that looks like. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, that's it's very interesting to you like to be able to share that you sought out coaching. I'm thinking about like I try to OT myself. I think many practitioners try to OT themselves, and it just I don't know, it's harder. I don't
It is.
know.
Sometimes another OT or somebody else. Oh, but I do want to mention also that for the nonprofit that my colleague and I ran, she was a hairstylist and I'm a makeup artist. So part of our model for the nonprofit to make it sustainable was providing beauty services. And then whatever income was generated through those beauty services, whether it's for like a fashion show or a wedding or, whatever the case may be, went back into the program. And so we kind of sustained it that way. Initially, we tried to make it a beauty training program, but then we quickly realized like not everybody wants to be a makeup artist or hairstylist, and we really should honor like preferences. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I just find it really, just unique being able to, thinking about makeup and using that as an intervention. Like, I would never have crossed my mind. Like, well, can you mind sharing sort of a sample story of like what that if you were had worked with a client in the past, without,
Yeah,
like what was that transformation like when you helped this particular individual with that?
sure. I had actually most recently at the last like quote unquote traditional OT job that I had, I worked with a client who was going through a major transition in his life. And he really wanted to explore how to utilize beauty to express himself, you know, more fully. But he felt like he didn't have a safe space to do that, like even going to look at shades or like what would look good, like, so, it was really fun. We used filters to try different looks. I actually brought my kit and then, he was able to play around with stuff. Like, then he figured out, okay, I want to start maybe with nails and lashes. Like, that's what I feel safe with, and so it was a very cool, gradual, like way to kind of help him explore his identity, his sexuality, and his the way he wants to express himself going forward. So, I mean, it was super powerful for me to kind of be able to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he had a blast too.
It sounds so powerful, to be able to provide against that consultation, that intervention to help somebody just be able to fully identify themselves and feel confident. I mean, that's the whole point of like any interventions that we, when we help our
Totally.
clients, right? Is helping them feel like empowered, like independent and self-expressive, whatever that looks like. That is amazing. I love it. I love it so much. I hope everyone else is kind of getting ideas like utilizing your passions to drive sort of interventions, and it could be sort of outside the setting, right? It doesn't have to always be in this clinical, space. We could broaden our scope. So I guess it kind of leads me to this next question, like what sort of unique challenges are you sort of experiencing right now, like venturing into this new space? I mean, again, inclusive beauty products, I no idea, So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, the challenges have definitely been plentiful. I mean, I think being back in school and then working for the county where you have a very specific role, very specific duties, and then breaking away from that like after the pandemic, which I feel like at which time we all kind of, you know it was hard.
It
We
was
forgot how to
hard.
do things that
Yes.
we used to do, which wasn't all bad, but yeah, but kind of finding my voice as a practitioner, as an artist, like a makeup artist, and combining them in a way that I could present to people who aren't familiar with maybe occupational therapy or what I'm trying to do in like a very digestible way. That's been challenging, kind of like, and even just building my brand, like my brand story around that has been really hard. I feel like that's a challenge that OTs can probably all relate to because we have a little bit of a struggle when it comes to branding ourselves. Like there's a reason why the OT elevator pitch is part of like our curriculum, but it's so helpful. And, I have to say that even in my last position where I was hired as an OT, a lot of the people that I worked with didn't really know what I did.
Mm.
And so I feel like that's been a common like through line. Like I've always had to kind of explain what my role is, what I'm doing. Keeps me on my toes for sure, but that's an ongoing challenge that I have. And then the other one is like, because I'm not doing something that a lot of people have done before, it's not something, not an established, like clear cut role. Trying to navigate that has been pretty challenging. It's super gray.
And but it's so unique that you're sort of venturing into this new realm that could really open up a lot of possibilities. It could really help potentially a lot of people. So, what are some of the supports that you are trying to lean
Yeah.
on to kind of keep you going?
Yeah. The supports actually have been so vital. I feel like without the support that I've been able to receive, I don't know where I'd be. Like, I have a really close friend who is a beauty brand founder. And so, it's basically like a beauty startup. So he's really been through, he's in the trenches now, so many years, even though he's successful and doing well, but, really leaning on him for advice and what would be helpful as, an outside, like quote unquote, adaptability or accessibility consultant for a brand.
Mm.
And then I was fortunate enough to connect with someone who's been mentoring me for the last, what is it, like 8 months now. She's also in the beauty space. She's an entrepreneur. And so kind of working with her to identify, what would be helpful. Um, and then I found this really amazing OTPT consultant through LinkedIn. She is like, I'm like, I really wish I was closer to you. She lives on the East Coast. I'm in LA, as you know. So, consulting with her as needed has been so helpful.
Either our profession's going to thank you as you continue to push the boundaries into this new realm. Like, I think it's going to be amazing. So,
I hope so. I'm excited for it. Yeah, I'm still figuring it out, but
right.
I think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of interest among the brands. And I definitely think it's an underrepresented space. Like, I think all people, deserve to be able to engage in something that's like wellness promoting and enhance
Meaningful.
quality of life. Yeah,
Yeah.
meaningful. Yeah,
Yeah.
fun.
Enhancing quality. Yeah,
Yeah.
fun, enhancing quality of life. Like, yeah, that's the last question would be, so what advice would you give to somebody who's inspiring and venturing into sort of this sort of non-clinical, non-traditional role in OT? Like, what advice would you give them?
I think the main thing would be to go for it. Just go for it. I mean, if you're passionate about something, if you see a white space for it, if there's a problem that you feel like you could solve, um, you know, I feel like our OT background is so unique because we're used to solving problems, and great, like we're so adaptable and really hearing what the client or, you know, whoever you're working with is seeking to do. I feel like these are all like really valuable skills that we have. And so just remembering that and just going for it. And then also, kind of like what I was alluding to earlier, like not doing it alone, like looking for people who can help you, especially if it's something that's new and different. I think having support is really, really important. So yeah, just putting yourself out there and connecting with people and being open.
Yeah. Wow. Esther, that is some great advice. And I hope I really appreciate you sharing your story because I think I'm inspired by just thinking about how, you are continuing to venture in this space and then opening up yourself to feedback and getting collaborators along with you. I think that's just inspiring. So I hope that everyone that's watching, whatever idea that you're thinking about, like just go for it, like, and then like with failures, I mean, failure we learn, right? I mean, that's just the whole point.
Mhm.
But
I know it's not always realistic to just go for it. Like
yeah.
you have bills to pay and things, but you don't have to start, like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can start
Mhm.
small to kind of, you know, get, just kind of test the waters little by little. You can grade it up. Like it doesn't have to be like quit your job and then go all in. Like, no.
Right, right.
Yeah, our
So
student loans are coming back in October. I know. Like
woo!
we
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So sort of kind of applying sort of task analysis to our own lives and ventures, right? Just start small, things that are manageable, and then move forward. Yeah. That's really great advice. Well, Esther, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Everyone else, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're inspired. If you're thinking about even this inclusive beauty space, reach out to Esther. I mean, there you go. There's a connection.
Yep.
Build a bigger community of collaborators. So Well, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll catch you later.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.